Perfect. So the topic that I'm bringing today is the digital commerce P&L. So just to introduce myself real quick, my name is Paulo Pinto. I'm with VTEX for 3 years. I'm an engineer. Did a lot of stuff in my career. Started working with aircraft engines, worked power plants, chemical products, until I finally found my way into the software industry. I'm with VTEX since 2019. I started here leading the growth operations team. Last year, I left Growth Ops and joined the strategy and planning team. Basically, it's a new area in VTEX that we're doing budget, helping with strategic planning, future declaration, and so on. So let's jump into the topic then. The idea today here, the agenda, what I want to present to you and discuss with you. First, to explore the digital commerce P&L, explain a little bit the anatomy of the P&L, then discuss the impacts of technology in the P&L. And when I say technology, it's basically the platform itself. Then bring a couple of real cases just to illustrate a little better what we're talking about, and then close the talk. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So the P&L, it's something that is always discussed in most of the CMC tests, and it's always a hot topic, right? What's the perfect P&L? What's the P&L of a digital commerce? So starting with the basic of the P&L, right? The P&L comes from profit and loss. It's a financial statement that shows us the revenues, the costs, and the expenses of a certain business. It's usually it's a specific period, so you can have a monthly, quarterly, or the whole year P&L. And it's divided into those 3 big blocks, right? The revenue block, it's everything you sell, the costs, everything related to the products you're selling or the services you're selling, and then the expenses. So moving into the first block, right? The revenue. So it's basically what you're selling, right? If you're an e-commerce that sells products, all the products you're selling, the sales you're making, the revenue you're generating, that's the first big block. Then you also have the discounts there, right? Discounts deduct from your gross revenue, and then you have your net revenue. Net revenue is the basic for, is the first big number for any P&L. So talking about digital commerce, right? If I have just a regular store, I mean, everything I'm selling there is my revenue. When we talk about digital commerce, we can deep dive into the revenue piece. So the revenue is basically the number of sessions you have times your average order value times your conversion rate. And then you also multiply by the payment approval rate if your conversion rate is not considering the payment approval. And then you also need to take into account your cancel orders and returns. So giving an example here on this specific P&L that I'm using here, if you think about the gross revenue, you have, for example, 1 million sessions, then 1.8% conversion rate. Let's say 75% of the orders are actually approved and paid, and then you have 5% returns, and your AOV is $200. If you do this math, that's the number you get to, okay? So moving into the costs piece, costs are basically directly related to the products you're selling. So let's say you don't sell anything, you should not have any costs, right? Costs are related to the products or the services you're selling. So the first piece here is the cost of the goods sold. So let's say you're selling t-shirts, you get those t-shirts for 10 and you sell them for 15. 10 is your cost of goods, right? It's how much you're paying for that product to put into your stock. Then you have your technology or platform costs. You have warehousing costs and fulfillment. So warehousing, you need to take into account how long your product sits in the warehouse and how much you pay for the space. And then you apply that piece to the cost of your product. The fulfillment, basically picking, packing, getting everything ready, taking it to the truck and loading, right? Freight and logistics, and also reverse logistics, you need to take into account returns. And you have customer service, usually people calling, you need to have some people there just to have a call center or something. And you also have your payments, finance, and fraud. And here you have three pieces. Your payment piece is how much you need to pay to the payment provider you use. Fraud is stuff that you actually sold but never got the money, right? So it's kind of a loss. And finance is sometimes you need to finance your stock, and that's those are the three pieces here. So when you get your revenue and you deduct all the costs, you have this that's called the gross profit. Is how much money is in your pocket at the end of this sales process. And then the gross margin is just the percentage of that profit related to your total net revenue. So you know how much of your net revenue you're actually keeping after you pay all the costs of the products or services. And then you come into the expenses piece. The expenses, you usually have three types of expenses. The first one is sales and marketing. So it's everything you spend to promote your product or service, your salespeople, so marketing, advertisements, everything related to the sales is under the marketing or sales and marketing piece. Then you have the G&A, the general and administrative. So it's all your back office support people like your finance guys or people team and so on. And then you have your R&D, research and development, that is basically how much you're investing in the new stuff you're bringing into the digital commerce platform. And finally, once you deduct your, you get your gross profit and you deduct all the expenses, you have your EBITDA. It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortization. So it's basically how much you make in the end of the operation. It's a measure of your financial performance. It's the final big number you're looking at.
Paulo, just a quick question there.
Yeah.
Is EBITDA still the measure when you're looking at a P&L? Say if you're comparing two P&Ls, or as commerce experts here, if we're looking or presented with a P&L, is the EBITDA still the indicator for health of a company? Is that the number that we look at, in your opinion?
Yes, that's the big number. It's the end result. Of course, you have a mix of growth and your final number, right? So some companies that are growing really fast, they may spend a lot of money in sales and marketing, and then you have a negative EBITDA. and that's fine.
I don't know if you can hear Paulo. Can anyone hear him, or is it just me?
No.
Perfect. Paulo, we can't hear you.
Cannot hear me?
We can hear you now. There you
Okay.
go. You're
I don't
back.
know.
Sorry, we missed you for a second there.
Oh,
Sorry, you said it
sorry.
was a. You still said it was a good indicator. Sorry, continue, please.
Yeah, it is a good indicator, but then you need to balance with the company growth as well. So sometimes you may have a negative EBITDA, and that's fine because you're investing a lot in sales and marketing. For example, you're growing a lot your business, so you will keep putting money in sales and marketing to keep growing, and your EBITDA is negative. But at some point, when you stop investing that much in sales and marketing, then it turns back into the positive figure. So in the
Yeah,
end,
so it's
EBITDA is the final number there, right?
yeah, it is the figure, but it's interesting that the figure changes, but is still. It's difficult to just look at the number and say whether a company is healthy because you need to understand if they're still investing, if they're still stopping investing, or if they're growing, which I find it really, really nuanced. Coca's asked a question here. I know this topic is about the technology impact of technology, but Coca's asked, where does the payroll go? I think that's interesting. And she also asked, is it a problem to have people jumping from expenses to costs? I'm not sure about how if I understand that second part of it, but I think the first part, or Coca, feel free to jump in. But where does the payroll go? It's a good question.
It depends on who you're talking about, right? Let's say you have people in your payroll that is working with fulfillment. So the cost of that headcount goes into cost, goes right here in the fulfillment, right? But let's say it's your marketing manager, then it's under expenses. So it all depends what the person is doing and where it sits in the organization.
Great, thank you.
All right. So moving on, just a couple of comments here. A lot of questions about, hey, what's the usual percentage of, cost of goods or of fulfillment or freight or warehouse? I mean, each company, each business has a different P&L, right? Let's say we are selling a very low margin product. Your cost of goods will be much higher. If you're in a high margin, then cost of goods is lower. And it all depends. If you're it's really heavy and a big volume of freight could be much more than 7%. So it all depends on the company and the type of industry. But I'm using like an overall kind of average type P&L here to make the presentation. But it's important to note that there is no one perfect number for each one of those costs or expenses. Okay. And the other point that is important to note is that a lot of companies think that the P&L is something related to finance, right? That's the finance guys. They need to look at the final number. They are the ones that will report to the board and to the stakeholders and shareholders and so on. I don't care about it, but the more you know the P&L, especially of your area, the better you make decisions, because in the end, the bottom line is to provide return to the stakeholders in general, right? So each area, if you know well the P&L, you know your costs, you know your expenses, then you can make much better decisions. So moving into the impacts of the technology in the P&L, and again, I'm bringing some examples here, and it's not exhaustive at all because there are several things that the platform migration can bring as impact, but I'm bringing some of them here to discuss with you. So the first one is thinking about the first line, the revenue, right? Additional channels. Let's say you change your platform, and then the new platform has a lot more native connections with big marketplaces. It has live commerce, conversational commerce, omni-channel capabilities and everything. So just by moving to a new technology there, you are expanding your channels. You have a lot more streams of revenue. You're selling in a lot more places, and the expected result is that your revenue will grow, right? So that's one impact that we can see. The first one is product assortment. So let's say your new platform allows you to connect to other players in the ecosystem, and you become a marketplace, right? The connected commerce concept. You start to sell in your store a lot more products, a lot more stuff. So your consumer will enter the store and probably will buy a lot more stuff. It's also expected to increase your revenue. The SEO improvement. Different platforms have different ways to do all the search engine optimization, right? So some platforms will, in the end, bring you more traffic and increase the number of sessions. Another one is the conversion rate. So if we remember number of sessions time conversion rate times AOV, if you increase your conversion rate, you're immediately increasing your revenue. So some platform features, new features can do that for you, like checkout, an easier checkout, load speed, page load speed. Also, it's a platform feature that will keep people navigating and not leaving. The UX, promotions, features, and so on. So those are also things that can increase your revenue. AOV, average order value, increase your AOV, for example. If you have search and recommendation and really good engines in the platform, somebody's buying a t-shirt and then you say, hey, why don't you buy these those shorts also? They look good with this t-shirt. It's a recommendation, and it usually will increase the AOV. People will put more items in the same order. And also product availability with the omni-channel, for example. If you're running only a pure e-commerce with no physical store operation, then you have a limited stock. You run out of something, that's it. You won't sell it. But if you connect all your physical stores to the e-commerce, you increase the stock of all the items, then the chance to sell more increases a lot, right? So that's also something that the technology migration can bring as an impact. And you can also have impacts in costs, right? It's first items I was talking about revenue, but costs can also be impacted. So for example, logistics, you may have a platform that gives you logistics capabilities that will reduce your overall costs. Payments, let's say the platform has better deals with payment providers, and then it can bring that payment discount to you as a digital commerce operator. So these are some of the impacts that technology can bring. And I'll just jump into some examples here so we can kind of make it more tangible, right? So I'm using the same P&L that we used in the beginning. So again, If we look at the big formula here, right? Sessions, AOV, conversion rates, approval rates, and cancel orders. So the first example, let's say we increase the conversion rate, right? Let's say the conversion rate goes from 1.8 to 2.1. It's not a huge jump here, right? It's a 16% increase in the conversion rate, but your bottom line, you jump from 166 to 239, for example. So it's a 43% increase here, increasing 16%. And why is that? Your costs move with your revenue, but the expenses, they're about the same. They remain the same, right? Let's say we're assuming that we are not spending more in marketing. We have the same G&A team and the same R&D team. The only thing that changes is, you're selling more, and then of course you have more costs, but the fixed costs, they kind of remain the same there. The expenses, they don't move. Then you have a much better result. Another example here is increasing the number of sessions. Let's say that from 1 million, we go to 1.1 million. Everything else remains the same, right? It increases your EBITDA in 26%, for example, right? The next one is, okay, let's increase the AOV from 200 to 250. So it's a 25% increase. It increases my EBITDA in 65%. So it's like big jump. You have not a huge change in the first lines here, but then your final result is much better, right? So those are some examples, just fake examples that I showed. Now I'm going to show a couple of real cases. I'm not going to deep dive into them. We don't have a lot of time, but just to show what happened with migration, right? So the first case of platform migration was a fashion store. The results, increase AOV in 22%. That's a real case, okay? Second case here, also a fashion store, increase the AOV 20% and the conversion rate also about 20%. Basically, the conversion rate was in the new platform versus the old platform. It's a change of 20%, and then the AOV also increased 20%. So, I mean, the results were huge, right? You can expect a much better results in the operation, but those are real cases that I just wanted to illustrate here. And then some of the reasons, right? Page speed, stock availability, because they implemented omni-channel, and also better interface and features. So those are basically the reasons why we had those big results here. So just getting to my final slide here, right on time. Some takeaways here. The first one, I mean, the P&L is a really powerful tool, right? Companies should encourage everybody to learn about it and to use it to make decisions. Sometimes we make decisions based on feeling, or yeah, I think it's gonna work, but if you have data, it's, you can discuss its data. Also, the design of the P&L, something really important, because if you have a bad design, you may not see stuff that you could see if you had a good design. Let's say under costs, you just put everything together in just 2 lines, like finance and operational costs, and that's it. And then, okay, I'm having a bad result here, but I don't know what the problem is. I know it's operating costs, but what exactly is the issue? Then you need to deep dive and understand. If you have kind of more detailed P&L, you understand exactly where the problem is. You can see trends. You can see month after month if it's going up or down. If you're having an issue with your fulfillment, if you're paying too much in freight, and so on. So the P&L is a really, really important tool, but it needs to have a very good design. Otherwise, you won't get all the information you could. And finally, I mean, the technology, right? It causes a real impact in the results. So some of the examples we saw, just by changing technology, you can really change the operation and you can really change the final results. So that was it. If you have any questions or comments, I mean, feel free.
Definitely. I've got some comments. Feel free, the rest of the audience, if you want to come up with some questions while I'm talking, please feel free to do so. I think it's really was a great talk, Paulo. But I was thinking of two things while you were talking, which is something I've been reading recently, is creating a culture of people who understand a P&L and creating a P&L culture, which I think is really important. But also the fact that little changes can make a really big impact on a P&L, especially when we talk about conversion and really on the bottom line. We had some interesting comments, a lot of praise for the conversation. We also had a comment which is saying we should increase the use of these arguments in the sales process, which I think is really valuable. But even from a sales process to a design process to a marketing process, there's so many different avenues we can talk about trying to implement new things to affect the bottom line, essentially. Vanessa wrote a really interesting question. I think we might have 30 seconds to answer it. If a store is a marketplace in and is a seller in a marketplace out, the results from these streams should be analyzed in a separate P&L, or is it considered in the same result? I think if you can shed some light on that, Paulo.
Yes, I would look the two streams separately. I think you have two channels, right? Actually, you have one is assortment of products, and the other one is sales channel. So I think we should look at separately, because these are two separate things. I mean, you can still sell in the marketplace out if you have your own products instead of using somebody else's product, right? But maybe it's a product you don't have and you're selling there. So I would look at them separately. I would not put everything together.
Interesting. I think there's lots of different schools of thought on this as well. I know Patricia's written a nice comment there. Maybe you can do our next commerce chats, Patricia, if you're listening. That would be very nice. We'll always welcome you back. Really amazing talk. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, a special thank you as well to Paulo, who's spent the time making a great presentation. If you liked the content and you found something valuable in it, tell your friends, tell people around you, and join us for our next commerce chats. But 1 minute over. Thank you very much for joining, and I'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.